Welcome back to Studio 5. Addictions can destroy and even end lives. And perhaps you're concerned about a family member or a friend plagued by an addiction and you don't know where to turn or what to do. Do you remain silent and stay with them, or lecture and leave? Should you use tough love or walk away softly? We're here to share some wisdom on the matter is our own clinical psychologist, Dr. Liz Hale. Liz, welcome.
Thank you, Brooke.
A tough subject. A lot of people I know struggle with both themselves and with those they love. How much power do we have as friends and family to really reach out and help those who might be suffering?
We have a lot of power, actually. But bottom line is, no one else is more responsible than the addict themselves for starting the abuse and also stopping it. But I don't want people to underestimate the power they have in these relationships to really be influential with an addict. In other words, they're desperately in need of treatment, and they're desperately in need of someone to help them get that treatment. So don't shy away from that, and don't be empathic. Really stay with them and show your love and concern.
When it comes to helping someone, more so the timing of helping someone, I've heard before that they need to hit rock bottom before they can actually be helped and be reached. Is that true?
Well, you know, sadly, rock bottom for some addicts is death, and I think that's too high of a price, obviously. So why not raise the bottom a little bit? In other words, why not have the bottom be a series of failed relationships or ill health or a series of failed jobs? Why not have that be bottom enough?
So set your own standard of bottom and know when to reach in and when to help.
Yeah, enough is enough. When is enough for you?
And you recently visited a treatment center and had the chance to speak with some recovered addicts and some recovering addicts about that cycle that really holds them bound.
The turning point is it's a treatment center, but it's more of a treatment home. It's amazing. If I had someone going through this addiction, I really would want them to be there, because it's only an 8-person home, and it's very much an individualized plan, Brooke. And also they serve only whole foods, no sugar, no caffeine, and no nicotine. There's a very good reason for that. So take a look rather at the turning point.
I have had addiction problems since I was 19 years old. It started with pot, heroin, cocaine. I've done LSD, mushrooms, anything available I tried. I know I've hurt my kids emotionally. They've seen me try to kill myself.
What's different for Paul today?
I'm committed. I want to live. Before, I didn't care. Live or die, it didn't really matter. In fact, death looked like a better option. Now, I want to live.
By the time I was 23 years old, I realized I was addicted to alcohol and other drugs. I was also a young mom trying to raise a son. I would look at him and just think, you know what, I got to do something. I can't raise him and do this to myself. It took me a couple of times. I went to a couple of treatment centers. It took me 3 times. And I had my last drink 22 years ago.
How does one know when they're ready for help?
Are you alcoholic enough? Have you had enough? You don't have to be a gutter, drunk. Is it affecting your family? Is it affecting your relationships? Is it affecting your health?
Utah's Turning Point has a standard far different from other treatment centers.
They coming off of drugs and alcohol, and then we tell them, and you don't have sugar, you don't get to have caffeine, and we'd like you to quit smoking while you're here as well. And the reason for that is because people switch addictions.
And how do you best help someone who's suffering from an addiction?
Don't let them come in all hours of the night and give them money all the time and bail them out of jail, If you love them, sometimes you can love them to death by doing that kind of stuff. But by setting a boundary and saying, I love you enough that I'm not going to do this for you anymore, and then go get help for yourself.
Melanie mentioned it's not unusual for someone to switch addictions. Turning Point knows very well that someone might go into a treatment center with a heroin addiction. They might come out addicted to cigarettes when they didn't smoke cigarettes going in. So that's why they're very strict about that. If you want to know more, we'll put the Turning Point's information on our website.
It's an interesting philosophy, and one that makes sense, that you would switch addictions. I liked the suggestion of boundaries, that you need to set those boundaries, set those rules, and stick to them. But can you always stick to those boundaries? I mean, how hard fast do you need to stick to those rules that you set?
You do need to stick hard fast to them, and I think Al-Anon meetings can help. If you're someone and you have a loved one who's addicted, get to Al-Anon yourself, even if they're not going to go to AA. There's nothing more empowering, Brooke, than being with other people who are in the same situation and yet have had more experience in setting those boundaries and being very clear about where your line is.
An attitude that I've heard that really doesn't sit, quite honestly, comfortably with me is that you need to divorce yourself, so to speak, from that addict. So to save yourself from not going down with them. Is that helpful?
Well, I think the goal is to not go down with them from a financial standpoint or emotional, but again, never underestimate the power that you do have coming from a place of love and concern as a family member or friend. So the idea is to be very proactive and not reactive and rejecting.
I think it can be frustrating for families going through that situation. And having not been through it, I don't know, but I assume that it would be frustrating if you're trying to help someone.
Yes.
You're using, you're threatening them, you're trying to encourage them, you're trying to motivate them. It can be frustrating. Is it true that you can only do so much? You need to recognize your own limitations when it comes to helping a friend or a family with an addiction?
You know, you can't physically or legally force someone into treatment, but you could probably love them into treatment. I think we do have a lot of power, and I think that's the one message I want people to get. Don't forget that addicts, something happens to the brain, the choosing mechanism in the brain really affects them. They cannot make decisions like you and I can. So we really need to help them out, I think, more than we realize. So the hands-off approach concerns me too much. I think they really need us to be present.
And when we read your point there, remember, addiction is not a choice. Some people might say, but they did choose to involve themselves with that substance in the first place. You're talking, though, about after the fact, right?
Well, the how is the biology of it, that we have this predisposition to addictions. I have a lot of addiction in my family on both sides of the family, so much so that I didn't dare experiment with alcohol. It scared me to death. But there's also the why of addiction, and that's what we need to help our loved ones face. That's the emotional and the social reasons for the drug addiction.
So when you recognize a problem, you see a family member or a friend who you know is struggling, who you know is silently reaching out for help. How do you approach that? How do you break that bridge, that conversation, and really start a discussion?
Right, and strike when the iron is cold. I think that's that point, right? In other words, make sure that you're not going to have this conversation when someone is in withdrawals or they're in the middle of using. Do it when they're relaxed and when you're not quite so panicked, and say, Dad, thanks for meeting me for lunch today. I love spending time with you. But there is something I've been wanting to talk to you about, and that is your drinking. I notice you're drinking a lot more lately, and that really concerns me. You're not even playing golf anymore, and that's just not like you. I love you, and I think together we need to get some help.
It takes a lot of courage.
You bet it does. You bet it does. But sometimes we have no other choice. When we see someone wreaking havoc of their own lives, we've got to step in because we love them.
We do, yeah. You want to show that love in many different ways. And your final tip, Liz, is constructive coercion is the key.
You bet, especially if you need to start making these ultimatums, right? Never make threats you can't keep. Don't do it when you're emotional. And of course, present these ultimatums very lovingly and rational as possible. But again, remember that addicts are desperately in need of treatment, and they're desperately in need of someone to help them get that treatment. Okay. So don't pull away. Don't be apathetic.
Now's the time to show the love is really what I'm hearing you say.
Absolutely, and never stop. Even if one treatment center hasn't worked, try another one.
Okay, Liz, thank you so much.
Always my pleasure. If
you would like more information about today's discussion, you can go to our website, studio5.ksl.com. We've posted a lot of helpful links for you. And if you want to contact Dr. Liz about this segment or her private practice, you can do so by emailing her at drliz@ksl.com.